The day I lost the ability to walk was the same day my family lost their freedom. I'm Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. Some memories fade with time, but not this one. Not the moment when my entire world tilted on its axis, and everything I thought I knew about my family shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. Picture this. You're lying on cold concrete, unable to feel anything below your waist, and the people who are supposed to love you most in this world are standing over you, laughing, telling you to stop being dramatic, accusing you of ruining a party. What would you do? Where would you even begin? If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever had your pain dismissed by the people who should care most, stay with me. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and let me tell you about the day a birthday party destroyed my body but freed my soul. Growing up as the youngest in the Parker family should have been a blessing. Our home in the suburbs of Massachusetts looked perfect from the outside. My father, Richard Parker, ran a successful accounting firm. My mother, Linda, was the picture-perfect housewife who never missed a PTA meeting. And then there was my older brother, Marcus, 3 years my senior, the golden child who could do absolutely no wrong. But perfection is often just a carefully maintained illusion. My father was a tall, imposing man who believed emotions were weaknesses to be stamped out. He'd grown up with a military father, and those harsh lessons had been drilled into him so deeply that he passed them down like toxic heirlooms. Sarah, toughen up, became the soundtrack of my childhood. Scraped knee? Toughen up. Broken heart? Toughen up. Actual illness? You guessed it, toughen up. My mother wasn't cruel exactly. She was just absent when it mattered. Her loyalty always belonged to my father first, Marcus second, and me. Well, I was somewhere down the list, probably after the family dog. She lived in constant fear of disrupting the delicate balance of our household. And if acknowledging my suffering meant upsetting that balance, she'd choose denial every single time. Marcus would never complain about something like that, she'd say, drawing those painful comparisons that cut deeper than any physical wound ever could. And Marcus? He learned early that he inhabited a world without consequences. Athletic, charming, manipulative. He perfected the art of appearing perfect in front of our parents while tormenting me behind closed doors. The worst part? He was good at it. Really good. I was 7 when it started to become clear just how deep this pattern ran. Marcus pushed me off my bike, and my wrist snapped like a dry twig. When I cried to our parents, Marcus claimed I'd fallen because I was clumsy. They believed him without a single question. At the hospital, my father lectured me about being more careful while my mother fretted about the cost. Not once, not even once, did they consider Marcus might be lying. This became our family's twisted rhythm. Marcus would hurt me, either physically or emotionally, and our parents would either ignore it or blame me for provoking him. When I was 12, Marcus locked me in our basement during a thunderstorm. I was terrified of the dark, he knew that. I screamed until my throat was raw, pounding on that door until my fists were bruised. When I finally escaped hours later and confronted my parents, they accused me of making up stories for attention. Can you imagine that? Being trapped in your worst nightmare and having your parents tell you it never happened? At 16, the night before my biggest science project was due, Marcus destroyed it. Months of work gone in minutes. When I told my parents, they suggested I should have been more prepared, that I shouldn't have left everything to the last minute. The project had been finished. Marcus had deliberately sabotaged it. But the truth didn't matter in our house. Only the narrative that kept Marcus perfect mattered. By 18, I'd learned my lesson. I left for college in another state and came home only when absolutely necessary. I built a life for myself, became an elementary school teacher, found friends who actually saw me, started therapy to unpack all the damage. I created boundaries, distance, a life where I could breathe, but family ties are like invisible chains. No matter how far you run, guilt and obligation have a way of pulling you back. Which is why, when my mother called 6 months after my last visit, insisting I attend Marcus's 31st birthday celebration, I felt that familiar pull, that old hope that maybe things had changed. Maybe time and distance had softened them. Maybe this time would be different. It would mean so much to Marcus if you came, my mother said, though I seriously doubted Marcus cared whether I was there or not. We're having a backyard barbecue. Your father just finished the new pool deck. Everyone will be there. By everyone, she meant Marcus's friends, a collection of entitled men who reminded me exactly of my brother. The thought of spending an afternoon with them made my stomach turn. But I'd run out of excuses. Fine, I'll be there. Wonderful. And Sarah? Please dress nicely. You know how important appearances are to your father. That comment was meant to sting, and it did. My parents had never approved of my more casual style, my rejection of their preppy expectations. It was a small rebellion, but in the Parker household, even the smallest deviation was treated like a major crime. As I hung up, I tried to prepare myself mentally. I'd go to the party, make small talk, give Marcus a generic card with some cash, and leave as soon as possible. A few hours of discomfort for months of peace. That was the trade. What I couldn't have known was that this birthday party would be the last time I'd ever walk on my own. That Marcus's cruelty would finally cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. That my parents' refusal to believe me would transform from emotional neglect into criminal negligence. I packed an overnight bag. I'd stay at a hotel, not in my childhood bedroom. Even that small boundary mattered. I chose an outfit that would pass inspection. Dark jeans, a green blouse, comfortable flats. Appropriate, but authentic. During the 2-hour drive to my parents' house, I practiced the techniques my therapist had taught me. Deep breathing, visualization, reminding myself I was an adult with the power to leave if things got uncomfortable. But no amount of therapy could have prepared me for what was waiting. I arrived at exactly 2 o'clock, timing my entrance to coincide with the party's official start. In a crowd, I could blend in, avoid becoming the sole target of their attention. The driveway was already packed with expensive cars, SUVs and sports cars belonging to Marcus's crew. I recognized Tyler's red Corvette immediately. Tyler had been Marcus's best friend since childhood, and equally complicit in making my life miserable. My mother greeted me at the door with an air kiss and a visual inspection that told me my outfit barely passed muster. "Sarah, you made it. Everyone's out back. Marcus just opened his presents." Of course, they'd started without me. A subtle reminder that my presence wasn't essential, merely tolerated. The living room looked like a luxury store had exploded. Expensive wrapped packages, designer golf clubs, high-end clothing, and, I couldn't believe it, keys to a jet ski sitting on top of a massive box. "We got him that jet ski he's been wanting," my mother said proudly. "Your father's having it delivered next week." For my 30th birthday 6 months earlier, they'd sent me a $50 gift card. The disparity wasn't new, but it still hurt like a fresh wound. I placed my card with $200 cash on the table and followed my mother to the backyard. The scene was exactly what I'd expected. About 30 people, mostly men in their early 30s, drinking beer and lounging around the new pool deck. My father stood at the grill like the king of suburban masculinity, flipping burgers with practiced precision. Marcus held court near the pool, surrounded by his usual admirers, beer in hand, gesturing wildly as he told some exaggerated story about himself. He'd gained weight since I'd last seen him. His once athletic frame now showed the effects of too many nights drinking and not enough discipline. When he spotted me, he broke away from his group and approached with artificial enthusiasm. "Little sis, you actually showed up." His words seemed friendly enough, but his eyes held that familiar coldness. He pulled me into a hug that was too tight, too aggressive, a physical reminder of who had the power in our relationship. "Happy birthday." "Marcus," I said, extracting myself as quickly as possible. "Dad spent a fortune on this deck," he said, gesturing to the wooden structure surrounding the in-ground pool. Custom-built Brazilian hardwood. Cost him nearly $20,000. Another unspoken comparison. Our parents would spare no expense for Marcus's comfort while treating my needs as burdensome impositions. I excused myself to get a drink, choosing water over alcohol. I needed to keep my wits about me. Alcohol would only dull my defenses and make me more vulnerable. For the next hour, I managed to avoid direct interaction with my family by talking to other guests. A few spouses and girlfriends seemed equally uncomfortable with the increasingly rowdy atmosphere. We formed a quiet alliance of outsiders. But as the afternoon wore on and the alcohol flowed more freely, I could sense the energy shifting. Marcus and his friends grew louder, more obnoxious. They started reminiscing about high school, swapping stories that always involved humiliating someone they deemed beneath them. Eventually, inevitably, Marcus turned his attention to me. "Hey, remember when we convinced Sarah the neighbor's dog had rabies?" He called out loud enough for everyone to hear. "She was so scared she wouldn't go outside for a week." His friends roared with laughter. I felt my cheeks burn with that familiar mixture of embarrassment and rage. I'd been 8 years old. The fear had been real. The nightmares had lasted months. "Or that time we switched her shampoo with hair removal cream," Tyler added, slapping his knee like this was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. I'd been 14. I'd worn hats to school for weeks while my hair grew back in patches. My parents had told me to stop being dramatic. I took a deep breath and started gathering my things. I'd reached my limit. No family obligation was worth this humiliation. But as I turned to leave, Marcus intercepted me. "Leaving so soon? The party's just getting started." His words were slurred. He was drunk, which always made him more unpredictable, more dangerous. "I have a long drive back," I said firmly, trying to step around him. Marcus blocked my path. "Come on, sis, loosen up, have a drink with us, for old time's sake." I knew this routine. The forced camaraderie that would inevitably lead to public humiliation. I'd fallen for it too many times before. "No thanks, Marcus. I really need to go." His face hardened, the mask of friendliness slipping to reveal pure cruelty underneath. Still the same uptight Sarah. Some things never change. I walked away, heading toward the sliding glass door that led back into the house. I just needed to grab my purse, say a quick goodbye, and escape. But fate, or perhaps Marcus's malice, had other plans. To reach the house, I had to cross a section of the new pool deck. As I stepped onto the wooden boards, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The surface felt strangely slick beneath my flats. I glanced down and noticed a slight sheen on the wood, almost imperceptible unless you were looking for it. In that split second, I knew what was about to happen, but it was already too late to stop it. My foot slid forward violently, throwing me completely off balance. I tried to catch myself, arms flailing wildly, but the slipperiness was too complete, too deliberate. My other foot shot out from under me, and I felt my body falling backward. Time slowed to a crawl. I could see Marcus and his friends watching, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and cruel amusement. I could see my father turning from the grill, my mother pausing mid-conversation. Everything happened in slow motion, but impossibly fast at the same time. Then came the impact. Not with the wooden deck as I'd expected, but with the concrete lip of the pool. My lower back struck first, followed immediately by my head. A double blow that sent shooting pain up my spine and exploded like fireworks behind my eyes. I heard someone scream. Only later would I realize that sound had come from me. The world tilted and spun, colors blurring together as my vision swam in and out of focus. When things finally stabilized, I was lying flat on my back, staring up at the clear blue sky. The pain in my head was excruciating, but what terrified me more was what I couldn't feel. Anything below my waist? Nothing. Absolute nothing. "Help!" I gasped, my voice barely audible. The impact had knocked the wind out of me. "Please help me. I can't feel my legs." The first face that appeared in my field of vision was Marcus's. He was looming over me, and to my absolute horror, he was smiling. "Nice fall, sis. Very dramatic." He turned to his friends. She always was into theater. I tried to move, to sit up, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My arms worked, but when I attempted to shift my legs, there was nothing. No response, no sensation, just a terrifying void where the lower half of my body should have been. "I'm serious," I said, my voice stronger now but edged with panic. "Something's wrong. I can't move my legs. I think I hit my back on the concrete." Marcus rolled his eyes, still convinced this was some kind of performance. "Come on, get up. You're embarrassing yourself." I can't get up. I was crying now, tears of pain and fear streaming down my face. "Please call an ambulance. I think I'm really hurt." By this point, a crowd had gathered around me. I could see curiosity and discomfort on their faces, but no one was moving to help. They were taking their cues from Marcus, assuming this was just family drama for their entertainment. My father pushed through the onlookers, his face set in that familiar mask of irritation. "What's going on here, Sarah? Why are you on the ground?" "Dad," I sobbed, relief washing over me. Surely my father would take this seriously. I slipped and fell. I hit my back on the pool edge. I can't feel my legs. I need to go to the hospital. I expected concern, urgency, immediate action. What I got instead was a dismissive scoff. "For God's sake, Sarah, the deck is perfectly safe. I just had it installed by professionals." He gestured impatiently. "Walk it off. Stop being a baby. You're making a scene at your brother's party." Those words hit me like a second physical blow. Even now, even when I was literally unable to move, my pain was being dismissed. My experience invalidated. "Richard, maybe we should help her up," my mother suggested, appearing at his side. But her concern wasn't for my well-being. "People are watching." "I can't get up," I repeated, my voice rising with desperation. "I need an ambulance. Please, Mom, Dad, I'm begging you." "Something is seriously wrong." My mother knelt beside me, her voice lowering to an angry whisper. "Sarah Parker, that's enough. You've always been jealous of your brother's attention, but this is taking things too far. You're ruining his birthday party with this performance." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The pain in my back was intensifying, radiating outward in waves that made it difficult to concentrate. My head throbbed where it had struck the concrete. Nausea rose in my throat. "I think I'm going to be sick," I moaned. "She's probably drunk," I heard Marcus tell someone. "Classic Sarah can't handle her alcohol." I hadn't had a single drink, but facts had never mattered in my family's narrative about me. The sun beating down on my face made the nausea worse. I was sweating profusely, and a strange tingling sensation had started in my fingertips. I knew these were bad signs. Shock, maybe internal bleeding. "Please," I whispered, no longer having the energy to shout. "I need help." My father had walked away, returning to the grill as if nothing was happening. My mother was making excuses to the guests, telling them I'd always been prone to dramatic episodes. Marcus had lost interest entirely, moving back to his group of friends. I was alone, immobile, in agony, surrounded by people who were choosing to ignore my suffering. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain ever could. Then, from the edge of my fading consciousness, I heard a new voice. Firm, authoritative, female. "Excuse me, I'm a nurse. Let me through, please." The crowd parted, and a woman I didn't recognize knelt beside me. She had kind eyes and capable hands that immediately went to my wrist, checking my pulse. "Hi there, I'm Jennifer. I work in the ER at Massachusetts General. Can you tell me your name?" "Sarah," I managed to say through chattering teeth. I was cold now despite the summer heat. "Okay, Sarah. I need you to stay very still. Can you tell me what happened?" I explained about the fall, the impact with the pool edge, the immediate loss of sensation in my legs. Jennifer's expression remained neutral, but I could see concern in her eyes. She leaned closer and spoke quietly. "I'm going to check a few things, but I don't want you to move at all. Okay?" She gently pressed her fingers against various points on my legs, asking if I could feel the pressure. I couldn't. She asked me to wiggle my toes. Nothing happened. "I'm calling an ambulance," she announced, pulling out her phone. "She doesn't need an ambulance," my mother protested, suddenly reappearing. "She just needs to get up and stop making a fuss." Jennifer fixed my mother with a level stare. "Ma'am, your daughter has signs consistent with a spinal cord injury. Moving her could cause permanent damage. She needs emergency medical attention immediately." For the first time, a flicker of real concern crossed my mother's face. Spinal cord injury? That's impossible. She just slipped. Falls are one of the most common causes of spinal injuries, Jennifer replied, already dialing 911. And from what I can see, she hit the concrete edge quite hard. As Jennifer spoke with the emergency dispatcher, I saw my father approaching. His expression had shifted from annoyance to apprehension. "What's all this about an ambulance?" he demanded. Jennifer, still on the phone, held up a hand to silence him. After giving the dispatcher the necessary information, she turned to address my father. "Sir, your daughter has potentially suffered a serious spinal injury. The paramedics will be here in about 10 minutes. Until then, it's absolutely crucial that she not be moved." My father's face paled. For the first time, I think he was beginning to realize this wasn't an act. "How did this happen?" he asked, looking around as if searching for someone to blame other than himself. Through the fog of pain and fear, I managed to speak. The deck was slippery, like it had oil or something on it. My father's eyes narrowed. "That's ridiculous. I just had it sealed yesterday. It shouldn't be slippery at all." But Jennifer, ever observant, was already examining the wooden boards near where I'd fallen. She touched the surface, then rubbed her fingers together. "This isn't water," she said, her voice hardening. "This feels like some kind of lubricant." All eyes turned to Marcus, who had wandered back over to see what the commotion was about. His face, flushed from alcohol, suddenly drained of color. "It was just a joke," he muttered, not meeting anyone's gaze. "Just a little prank. I put some of Dad's deck oil on a few boards. I thought she'd slip a little and maybe fall in the pool. I didn't think—" He trailed off, the implications of his actions finally seeming to dawn on him. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, as I lay immobile on the ground, I saw the truth of my family reflected in their faces, the casual cruelty that had defined our relationships, the willful blindness to the harm they caused, the reflexive protection of Marcus at all costs. But this time, there would be consequences they couldn't ignore away. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. The wailing sirens grew louder, cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the backyard. Jennifer remained by my side, monitoring my condition and keeping everyone else at a safe distance. "Try to stay calm," she said softly. "Help is almost here. Just focus on your breathing." I was trying, but panic kept threatening to overwhelm me. The numbness in my lower body was terrifying, a void where sensation should be. Each breath sent fresh waves of pain through my back and head. The party guests had begun to disperse, moving away from the scene, murmuring among themselves. Some were already leaving, not wanting to be involved. Others watched from a distance with expressions of morbid curiosity. My mother hovered nearby, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by nervous energy. She kept straightening her clothes, touching her hair, small gestures that betrayed her anxiety about how this would appear to others. "Do you really think this is necessary?" she asked Jennifer. "Maybe we could just take her to urgent care ourselves." Jennifer's response was firm. "Absolutely not. She needs proper immobilization and transport. Any improper movement could worsen a spinal injury." The paramedics arrived with remarkable efficiency, 2 women and a man wheeling a stretcher through the gate. Jennifer immediately briefed them on my condition and the circumstances of my fall. The lead paramedic, a woman named Kelly according to her name tag, knelt beside me. "Hello, Sarah. I'm Kelly. We're going to take good care of you. Can you tell me where the pain is worst?" "My lower back," I managed to say. "And my head. But I can't feel anything below my waist." Kelly nodded, her expression professional but kind. "We're going to put a cervical collar on you to stabilize your neck. Then we'll carefully log roll you onto a backboard. It's important that you don't try to help us move you. Just stay as still as possible." As they worked, Kelly asked questions about the fall, how it happened, whether I'd lost consciousness. Jennifer filled in details about my vital signs and the assessment she'd done. Then Kelly asked a question that changed everything. "Was the surface where you fell naturally slippery, or was there something on it that caused you to slip?" Before I could answer, Jennifer spoke up. "There appears to be some kind of oil or lubricant on the deck boards. I believe it was placed there deliberately. Kelly paused in her work, looking up sharply. Deliberately? Can you elaborate? Her brother admitted to putting deck oil on the boards as a prank, Jennifer said, her voice level, but with an undercurrent of anger. He intended for her to slip. Kelly and the other paramedics exchanged glances. Then Kelly turned to look at Marcus, who stood with his hands shoved in his pockets, staring at the ground. Sir, is that accurate? Did you intentionally create a slipping hazard that caused this injury? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. It was just supposed to be a joke. I didn't think she'd get hurt like this. Kelly's expression hardened. She turned to her colleague. Brian, can you check the deck surface and document what you find, please? Brian nodded and moved to examine the area where I'd fallen, taking photos with a small camera and collecting a sample of the substance. Meanwhile, the paramedics continued working methodically to immobilize me. They placed a rigid collar around my neck, then carefully positioned themselves to roll me as a unit onto the backboard. On my count, Kelly instructed. 1, 2, 3. They moved me with practiced precision, but despite their care, the movement sent fresh agony through my body. I cried out, unable to suppress the sound. I know it hurts, Kelly said sympathetically. We'll give you something for the pain as soon as we have you secured. Once I was strapped to the backboard, they transferred me to the stretcher and began attaching monitoring equipment. Kelly placed an oxygen mask over my face and inserted an IV line into my arm. Your blood pressure is quite low, she noted, frowning at the monitor. And your heart rate is elevated. We need to get you to the hospital right away. My mother finally seemed to grasp the severity of the situation. Is she going to be all right? Kelly didn't offer false reassurance. She has signs consistent with a significant spinal injury. The sooner we get her to a trauma center, the better her chances for recovery. As they prepared to move me to the ambulance, Brian returned from inspecting the deck. He spoke quietly to Kelly, showing her something on his camera screen. Her expression grew even more serious. Based on what I'm seeing here and the circumstances described, I'm going to request police assistance, she announced. Police? My father sputtered. Surely that's not necessary. This was just an unfortunate accident. Kelly fixed him with a level gaze. Sir, deliberately creating a hazardous condition that results in serious injury is not just an accident. Additionally, I understand there was a delay in seeking medical attention for your daughter, despite her reporting loss of sensation, which is a medical emergency. My father's face flushed with anger. Now wait just a minute. You can't come into my home and make accusations. Dad, I said weakly from behind the oxygen mask. Please, just let them help me. For once, my father fell silent. Kelly made a call on her radio, requesting police presence at the scene. Then she turned back to me. We're going to move you to the ambulance now. The ride might be uncomfortable, but we'll do everything we can to keep you stable. As they wheeled me through the house and out to the waiting ambulance, I caught a final glimpse of my family. My father arguing with Brian, gesturing angrily. My mother standing with her arms wrapped around herself, looking lost. And Marcus, still rooted to the same spot, watching as the consequences of his lifelong cruelty finally caught up with him. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was a police cruiser pulling into the driveway, lights flashing. In that moment, despite the pain and fear, I felt a strange sense of validation. For the first time in my life, someone was taking my suffering seriously. I awoke to the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors and that antiseptic smell that seems universal to all medical facilities. For a moment, I was disoriented, unsure of where I was or how I'd gotten there. Then the memories came flooding back. A nurse noticed I was awake and approached my bedside. Welcome back, Sarah. I'm Daniel. You're at Massachusetts General Hospital. Do you remember what happened? I fell, I said, my voice raspy. At my brother's birthday party. I couldn't feel my legs. Daniel nodded, making a note in my chart. That's right. You've been in and out of consciousness for about 12 hours now. The doctor will be in shortly to discuss your condition. Can I get you some water? I nodded gratefully, and he helped me take small sips through a straw. Even this simple movement caused pain to flare in my back. What's wrong with me? I asked, fear making my voice tremble. Can I still not move my legs? Daniel's expression was compassionate but professional. The doctor will explain everything. She should be here any minute. Try to stay calm." As if on cue, a woman in a white coat entered the room. She was in her 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Good morning, Sarah. I'm Dr. Chen, the neurosurgeon who's been overseeing your care. How are you feeling?" "Scared," I admitted, "and in pain." "What happened to me?" "Why can't I feel my legs?" Dr. Chen pulled up a chair and sat beside my bed. "When you fell, you suffered what we call an incomplete spinal cord injury at the T12L1 junction, which is in your lower back. The impact fractured 2 vertebrae and caused significant compression of your spinal cord." She showed me images from my MRI on a tablet, pointing out the damaged areas. "We performed emergency surgery to remove bone fragments and reduce the pressure on your spinal cord. We also stabilized your spine with rods and screws. Will I walk again?" I asked the question that had been terrifying me. Dr. Chen didn't offer false hope, but neither did she extinguish it entirely. Spinal cord injuries are complex, and outcomes can vary widely. The fact that yours is an incomplete injury is actually positive news. It means the spinal cord wasn't completely severed. She continued explaining that over the coming weeks and months, we'd get a clearer picture of how much function I might recover. Some patients with similar injuries regain significant mobility. Others experience more limited improvement. So I might be paralyzed forever? "I wouldn't use the term forever at this stage," Dr. Chen replied carefully. "But yes, you're currently experiencing paraplegia, paralysis affecting the lower limbs. We'll work with you to maximize whatever recovery is possible, but you should be prepared for the possibility of long-term mobility challenges." The news hit me like a physical blow. "There's something else we need to discuss," Dr. Chen said, her tone shifting. "The circumstances of your injury have prompted an investigation. There are 2 police officers waiting to speak with you when you feel up to it." "My brother put oil on the deck," I said. "He admitted it. He wanted me to slip as a joke," Dr. Chen nodded. "That's consistent with the information we received from the paramedics. And there seems to be some concern about the delay in seeking medical attention after the injury occurred." "My parents didn't believe I was really hurt," I said, the familiar pain of their dismissal washing over me. "They told me to walk it off. They accused me of being dramatic." A flash of something, anger perhaps, crossed Dr. Chen's professional demeanor. "In cases of suspected spinal cord injury, immediate immobilization and medical attention are crucial. Delays can significantly worsen the outcome. Are you saying that if they'd called an ambulance right away, I might not be paralyzed?" "It's impossible to say with certainty," she replied carefully. "But yes, in general, the sooner a spinal cord injury is treated, the better the prognosis. Every minute counts." I felt tears spilling down my cheeks. The injury itself was devastating enough, but knowing it might have been less severe if my family had simply believed me was an additional layer of betrayal. "Do you feel up to speaking with the police now?" Dr. Chen asked. "I'll talk to them," I decided. "I want them to know what happened." The police officers who entered were both women, which somehow made me feel safer. They introduced themselves as Detective Morgan and Officer Williams, explaining they were investigating the circumstances surrounding my injury. "We understand this is difficult," Detective Morgan said, "but we need to ask you some questions about what happened." I recounted everything as clearly as I could remember. Arriving at the party, Marcus's increasingly aggressive behavior, my attempt to leave, the fall on the slippery deck, and most importantly, my family's response. "So to be clear," Detective Morgan clarified, "after you fell and reported that you couldn't feel or move your legs, no one called for medical assistance?" "Not until Jennifer, the nurse who was at the party, intervened," I confirmed. "That was at least 15 or 20 minutes after my fall. My father told me to walk it off. My mother accused me of trying to ruin Marcus's birthday." Officer Williams, who had been taking notes, looked up. "And your brother admitted to putting oil on the deck?" "Yes, he said it was supposed to be a prank. He thought I'd slip and fall into the pool. He didn't think I'd hit the concrete edge." The officers exchanged glances. "We should inform you," Detective Morgan said, "that we've already taken statements from several witnesses at the scene, including the nurse Jennifer Cooper and the paramedics who transported you. We've also collected evidence from the deck, which confirmed the presence of deck oil in the area where you fell." She paused before continuing. Your brother, Marcus Parker, was taken into custody last night on charges of reckless endangerment resulting in serious bodily harm. Your parents, Richard and Linda Parker, are currently being investigated for negligence and failure to provide necessary medical assistance. The news stunned me. They could go to jail? That will be up to the district attorney and ultimately the courts, Detective Morgan replied. But yes, these are serious charges, especially given the severity of your injuries. After they left, I lay in the hospital bed, trying to process everything. The physical reality of my injury was overwhelming enough, but the legal implications were equally staggering. No one from my family had called or visited. I wondered if they were legally prevented from contacting me, or if they were simply continuing their lifelong pattern of avoidance. Over the next few days, I learned more about what was happening with the criminal case. A prosecutor named Amanda Liu visited me to explain the charges. Marcus is facing felony reckless endangerment, she explained. That carries a potential sentence of up to 10 years. Your parents are charged with criminal negligence and failure to provide necessary medical assistance, up to 5 years each if convicted. She also told me I had the right to file a civil lawsuit for damages, regardless of the criminal outcome. Medical expenses for spinal cord injuries can run into the millions over a lifetime, not to mention lost wages, pain and suffering, home modifications. It was overwhelming. Part of me wanted nothing to do with my family anymore, but the practical reality was that I faced enormous financial challenges because of their actions. Amanda connected me with a personal injury attorney named Robert Harrison, who specialized in spinal cord injury cases. He visited me the next day. Your case is strong, he told me after reviewing everything. Continue the liability is clear, especially with Marcus's admission. Your parents' homeowner's insurance will likely cover some damages, but for full compensation, we'd need to go after their personal assets as well. The thought made me uncomfortable. Despite everything, these were still my parents. But Robert gently pointed out that my new reality would include extensive medical bills, potential lifelong care needs, and significantly altered earning capacity. This isn't about revenge, he assured me. It's about ensuring you have the resources to live as full and independent a life as possible. I agreed to let him file the lawsuit. It felt both necessary and heartbreaking. After 2 weeks in acute care, I was transferred to a specialized spinal cord injury rehabilitation center. The facility was modern, with a team of physical therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, and rehabilitation nurses all focused on helping patients like me. My primary physical therapist was a woman named Angela, who combined unwavering optimism with pragmatic realism. Our goal is to maximize whatever function you regain, she explained during our first session. But equally important is learning to be as independent as possible with the function you have right now. The days fell into a demanding routine. Mornings began with 2 hours of physical therapy, strengthening the muscles that still functioned, learning transfer techniques to move from bed to wheelchair and back. Afternoons included occupational therapy, where I learned adaptive techniques for daily living, from dressing myself to cooking from a seated position. There were group sessions where I met other people with spinal cord injuries at various stages of recovery. One of them was a woman named Maya, who had sustained a similar injury in a car accident 3 years earlier. She used leg braces and forearm crutches to walk short distances, though she relied on a wheelchair for daily mobility. It gets easier, she told me one evening. Not the physical stuff necessarily, though that does improve. I mean the emotional adjustment. Right now, everything in your life is defined by your injury. Eventually, it becomes just one aspect of who you are, not your entire identity. Her words gave me hope during the darkest moments. There were good days, managing to stand between parallel bars with the support of leg braces, experiencing new flickers of sensation in my feet. And there were setbacks, infections that delayed therapy, moments of despair when the magnitude of what I'd lost overwhelmed me. Throughout this time, I received no contact from my family. My attorney informed me they'd been instructed by their legal counsel not to communicate with me due to the pending cases. Part of me was relieved. Another part felt the absence as yet another abandonment. But friends and colleagues from the elementary school where I taught stepped in. They organized visitor rotations, brought home-cooked meals, and set up a fundraising campaign to help with expenses not covered by insurance. 3 months after my injury, the criminal cases moved toward resolution. Marcus accepted a plea deal, admitting to felony reckless endangerment in exchange for a 5-year sentence with 3 years to be served in prison and 2 on probation. My parents also took plea agreements, receiving 3 years of probation and 500 hours of community service each, along with mandatory counseling. The civil case took longer. Robert deposed each family member, collecting their sworn testimony about the events. The process was grueling but necessary, forcing them to acknowledge under oath the reality of what they'd done. 6 months after filing the lawsuit, we reached a settlement. My parents' homeowner's insurance paid out its maximum liability of $1 million. Additionally, my parents agreed to sell their house and liquidate a significant portion of their retirement savings to create a trust fund of an additional $2.5 million for my ongoing care needs. It was substantial, enough to cover my immediate medical expenses, modifications to make my apartment accessible, and provide a financial cushion. But no amount of money could restore what I'd lost. By the 8-month mark, I'd made what my medical team considered remarkable progress. I'd regained some function in my leg muscles, enough that with specialized braces and a walker, I could take short, labored steps. It wasn't true walking, but it was more than many with similar injuries ever achieved. I was discharged from inpatient rehabilitation, continuing with outpatient therapy 3 times a week. I moved back to my apartment, which had been modified with ramps, wider doorways, and an accessible bathroom. I also began reimagining my professional life. The school district offered me a position as a curriculum specialist, a role I could perform largely from home with occasional school visits. Throughout this period of physical recovery, I was also engaged in another kind of healing. I worked with a therapist named Dr. Patricia Reynolds, who specialized in trauma and family dynamics. "What happened to you wasn't just a physical injury," Patricia pointed out during one of our sessions. "It was the culmination of a lifetime of emotional abuse and neglect. The paralysis in your legs is visible, but there are other invisible wounds that need healing too." With her guidance, I began to process not just the trauma of the injury itself, but the deeper patterns of family dysfunction that had made it possible, the constant invalidation of my experiences, the golden child and scapegoat dynamic between Marcus and me, the way my parents had consistently prioritized appearances over my well-being. "Your family failed you in the most fundamental way," Patricia said. "They had one job, to protect you and care for you. Instead, they caused you harm and then refused to acknowledge it. Acknowledging this truth was painful, but ultimately liberating. It allowed me to see that my injury, devastating as it was, had also freed me from the toxic family system that had caused me so much suffering." "Do you think you'll ever reconcile with them?" Patricia asked during one session. I considered the question carefully. "I don't know. Part of me thinks there's no coming back from this. Another part wonders if these legal consequences might finally force them to confront their behavior. Either way," she said, "your healing doesn't depend on their acknowledgement or change. It's something you do for yourself. And slowly, painstakingly, that's what I began to do. Heal not just my body, but my sense of self, my understanding of what family should be and what relationships I deserved." As I approached the 1-year anniversary of my injury, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Marcus, writing from prison. The envelope sat unopened on my kitchen table for 3 days before I found the courage to read it. Inside was a lengthy, handwritten apology, the first genuine one I'd ever received from my brother. He wrote about the therapy he was undergoing in prison, how he was finally confronting the person he'd been and the harm he'd caused. He made no excuses for his behavior and asked for nothing in return, not even forgiveness. "I understand if you never want to hear from me again," he wrote in conclusion. "I wouldn't blame you. But I wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry for the pain I've caused you, not just on that day, but throughout our lives. You deserved so much better." The letter left me with complicated feelings. It seemed sincere, but I wasn't ready to let Marcus back into my life, if I ever would be. Still, there was a certain closure in having my experiences finally acknowledged. My parents never reached out directly, though I heard through mutual acquaintances they'd moved to Arizona, starting over in a smaller house with whatever assets they'd managed to retain. As for me, I was building a new life. Different from what I'd planned, certainly more challenging in many ways, but also rich with new meanings and connections. The friends who'd stood by me during my hospitalization became my chosen family. The disability advocacy community I joined gave me a sense of purpose and belonging I'd never experienced in my biological family. And somewhere along the way, I discovered a resilience within myself I hadn't known existed, a capacity not just to survive trauma, but to find meaning and even growth in its aftermath. 2 years have passed since that fateful day at Marcus's birthday party. 2 years since a cruel prank and a family's callous indifference changed the course of my life forever. My life today bears little resemblance to what it was before. I live in a different apartment now, a ground-floor unit with full accessibility features. I drive a car with hand controls. I work remotely most days, though I visit schools several times a month to train teachers on curriculum I've helped develop. Physically, I've made what my doctors consider remarkable progress. With leg braces and forearm crutches, I can walk short distances, though I still use a wheelchair for most daily mobility. I've regained sensation in about 60% of my lower body, though it remains altered, sometimes manifesting as pins and needles rather than normal feeling. There are good days and bad days. Days when I move with relative ease and almost forget my limitations, and days when pain or complications remind me forcefully of all that's changed. But the most significant healing hasn't been physical. It's been the internal journey from victim to survivor, from someone defined by what was done to her to someone who actively shapes her own story. 6 months ago, I became involved with a local advocacy group for spinal cord injury survivors, serving as a peer mentor for newly injured patients. Twice a week, I visit the same rehabilitation center where I once spent months relearning basic life skills. It doesn't get easier, I tell them, echoing what Maya once told me. But you get stronger, and you find new ways to define what matters. Through this work, I met Devin, a physical therapist specializing in neurological injuries. Our professional relationship gradually evolved into friendship, and more recently, into a tentative romance. He sees me for who I am, not defined by my disability, but not ignoring it either. With him, I'm learning what healthy love feels like, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine care. Marcus was released from prison 4 months ago, having served his full 3-year sentence. He wrote to me again, asking if we might meet someday when I feel ready. I haven't yet decided if such a meeting will ever be part of my healing journey. My parents remain in Arizona, living their lives separate from mine. Occasionally, I receive secondhand news through distant relatives. They've apparently told a sanitized version of events to their new community, painting themselves as devoted parents supporting their daughter through a tragic accident. The truth, as always in my family, has been reshaped to protect their image, but their narrative no longer has power over me. I've learned that my truth doesn't require their acknowledgement to be valid. My pain doesn't need their recognition to be real. This has been perhaps the most profound lesson of my journey, that validation must ultimately come from within. 3 months ago, something happened that I never could have anticipated, something that showed me just how far-reaching the consequences of that day had become. I received a call from Detective Morgan, who'd handled my case. She asked if she could meet with me in person. When she arrived at my apartment, she wasn't alone. She brought Jennifer, the nurse who'd saved my life at the party. "Sarah, there's something you need to know," Detective Morgan began. "After your case went public, we received several other reports. Anonymous at first, but then people started coming forward with names. Jennifer took over. It turns out Marcus had done this before. The prank, I mean. Not with the same devastating results, but similar setups designed to humiliate people. They showed me files, 4 other incidents over the past 6 years. A coworker who'd slipped at a company party and broken his wrist. A girlfriend who'd fallen and suffered a concussion. A college classmate who'd ended up with a sprained ankle. All had suspected Marcus but couldn't prove anything. All had been too afraid or too ashamed to come forward. Your case gave them the courage to speak up, Detective Morgan explained. The district attorney is reviewing the evidence now. There may be additional charges, but that wasn't all. There's something else, Jennifer said softly. After the publicity around your case, I started getting calls at the hospital from adult children who'd experienced similar dismissals of their pain by their parents. From people who'd been injured and told to walk it off when they needed emergency care. She pulled out a folder filled with stories. Dozens of them. Some had resulted in permanent injuries like mine. Others had been lucky, receiving help before irreversible damage occurred. But all shared the same theme. Families who'd prioritized appearances, convenience, or denial over the well-being of someone they were supposed to love. You started something, Sarah, Jennifer said. A conversation about medical neglect within families, about emotional abuse, about the real consequences of dismissing someone's suffering. I sat there stunned. My personal tragedy had somehow become a catalyst for broader change. There's a journalist who wants to interview you, Detective Morgan added. She's writing a series on family dynamics and medical neglect. Obviously, it's entirely your choice, but your story could help a lot of people. I thought about it for a long time. The idea of making my pain public, of reliving that day for strangers, felt overwhelming. But I also thought about those files Jennifer had shown me, all those people who'd suffered in silence. I'll do it, I said finally. If it helps even one person recognize they're in a toxic situation and get out, it'll be worth it. The article came out 2 months ago. It was featured in a major national magazine, with my story as the centerpiece and interviews with medical professionals, family therapists, and other survivors of family medical neglect. The response was overwhelming. Within days, my email was flooded with messages from people sharing their own experiences. Some were thanking me for giving voice to something they'd experienced but never known how to name. Others were asking for advice, for resources, for hope that things could get better. I couldn't respond to them all, but I read every single one. And each message reinforced what I'd come to understand, that my family's dysfunction wasn't unique. That dismissal of pain, especially within families, was far more common than I'd ever imagined. The article also had an unexpected effect on my relationship with Marcus. 3 weeks after it was published, I received another letter from him. This one was different. I've been going to therapy, he wrote. Real therapy, not just the court-mandated sessions. And I've been reading the responses to your article. Sarah, I had no idea how many people I'd hurt. I mean, I knew about you, God. I knew what I did to you. But seeing all those other stories, realizing I was part of a pattern of cruelty and dismissal, it's been devastating. He went on to explain that he'd contacted 2 of the other people who'd come forward about his pranks. He'd apologized to them, not asking for forgiveness, but acknowledging the harm he'd caused. Both had agreed to meet with him as part of their own healing processes. I'm not asking you to forgive me or to have a relationship with me, his letter concluded. I'm just letting you know that the changes I'm making are real, that your courage in telling your story has forced me to confront things I'd spent my whole life avoiding. Whatever happens between us, I want you to know that you saved my life too, just in a different way. I cried when I read that letter. Not tears of forgiveness exactly, but tears of something like resolution. A sense that maybe, just maybe, some good had come from all this pain. Last month I did something I never thought I'd do. I agreed to meet Marcus for coffee. We met at a cafe near my apartment, accessible and public. He arrived early, and I watched him through the window for a few minutes before going in. He looked different, smaller somehow, more humble. The arrogance that had always surrounded him like armor was gone. When he saw me approaching in my wheelchair, his face crumpled. Sarah, let me talk first, I said, cutting him off. I'm not here to absolve you or to rebuild a relationship. I'm here because I've learned that carrying anger is exhausting, and I'm tired. I'm here because my therapist says closure doesn't always mean reconciliation, but it does mean honesty. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. For the next hour, we talked. Really talked, maybe for the first time in our lives. He didn't make excuses, didn't try to minimize what he'd done. He just listened as I told him exactly how his lifetime of cruelty had affected me. How that day at the party had been the culmination of 28 years of dismissal and harm, and then, surprisingly, he shared his own pain. The impossible pressure to be perfect, the fear of disappointing our parents, the way he'd learned to deflect his own suffering by causing pain to others. "I'm not excusing what I did," he said. "I'm just trying to help you understand that I was broken too. I just broke outward instead of inward. It didn't excuse anything. But it did add a layer of context I hadn't considered before. We didn't hug when we left. We didn't make plans to meet again. But there was an acknowledgement between us, a recognition of shared damage and separate healing paths. Today marks exactly 2 years since that birthday party. 2 years since my life changed forever. I'm sitting in my accessible apartment, looking at the life I've built from the rubble of that day. On my desk are course materials for the training seminar I'm giving next week on trauma-informed teaching. On my phone are text messages from Devin asking what I want for dinner tonight. On my wall is a photo from last month's Disability Rights March, where I spoke to a crowd of 500 people about medical advocacy. This isn't the life I planned, but in many ways, it's a better life than I ever could have imagined. I've learned that strength isn't about never breaking, it's about what you build after you've been broken. I've learned that family isn't always the people you're born to, but the people who show up when it matters. I've learned that validation doesn't come from forcing others to acknowledge your pain, but from acknowledging it yourself and moving forward anyway. The physical challenges are still real. Yesterday was a bad pain day, and I spent most of it in bed with heating pads and medication. Tomorrow, I have an appointment with my orthopedic surgeon to discuss whether additional surgery might improve my mobility. The journey isn't over, and maybe it never will be, but I'm no longer defined by what was taken from me. I'm defined by what I've chosen to do with what remains. As for my parents, I haven't spoken to them since the day of the party. I don't know if I ever will. Patricia, my therapist, says that's okay, that forgiveness is optional, but healing isn't, that I can release the grip my family's dysfunction has on me without ever having a reconciliation scene. Some wounds don't close with apologies. Some relationships don't get restored with time, and that's okay. What's not okay is staying silent when you're suffering. What's not okay is accepting dismissal of your pain as normal. What's not okay is believing that family loyalty requires tolerating abuse. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you have family members who dismiss your suffering, who gaslight your experiences, who prioritize appearances over your well-being, please hear me, you deserve better. Your pain is real. Your experiences are valid. And there are people in this world who will believe you if you can find the courage to speak up. Don't wait for an injury that can't be ignored before you set boundaries. Don't wait for criminal charges before you acknowledge that something is deeply wrong. Don't wait for others to validate your suffering before you take it seriously yourself. I waited too long. I endured too much. And it cost me the use of my legs. But it also gave me something unexpected, a voice. A purpose, a community of people who understand that survival isn't just about enduring, it's about transforming pain into meaning. Last week, I received a message from a young woman named Emma. She'd read my article and recognized her own family dynamics in my story. She'd been experiencing mysterious health problems for months, but her parents kept telling her she was being dramatic, that she just wanted attention. "Your story gave me permission to trust myself," she wrote. "I went to the doctor without telling my parents. Turns out I have a serious autoimmune condition that requires immediate treatment. If I'd waited any longer, the damage might have been irreversible. You literally saved my life." That message sits on my desk now, a reminder of why I chose to speak up, why I chose to transform my tragedy into advocacy. My family took my ability to walk without help, but in doing so, they inadvertently gave me something they could never take away, the absolute certainty that I am stronger than the worst thing that ever happened to me. 2 years ago, I was a woman desperate for approval from people incapable of truly seeing me. Today, I'm a survivor, an advocate, a mentor, a friend, and yes, still learning, still healing, a person worthy of love and respect. The fall didn't define me. What I chose to do after the fall, that's what defines me. So here's what I want you to take from my story. If someone tells you to walk off a serious injury, they're wrong. If your family dismisses your pain repeatedly, that's abuse. If you feel invisible in your own home, that's not normal. It's neglect. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't owe anyone silence about abuse. You don't owe anyone your future health for their current comfort. Trust yourself. Believe yourself. Protect yourself. And if you can't do it for yourself yet, do it because somewhere out there is another person going through exactly what you're experiencing. And your courage to speak up might be the permission they need to save themselves. My brother is in therapy, genuinely trying to change. My parents are living with the consequences of their choices, and I'm here, 2 years later, not whole in the way I was before, but whole in a way that matters more, whole in my sense of self, my purpose, my boundaries, my worth. The physical scars will always be visible. The emotional scars will always be part of my story, but they don't have to be the end of my story. And whatever scars you're carrying, visible or invisible, they don't have to be the end of yours. I either. Thank you for listening to my journey. Thank you for witnessing my pain and my healing. And if this story resonated with you, please share it. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Please leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had your pain dismissed by someone who should have believed you. Your story matters. Your pain matters. You matter. And remember, healing isn't linear, but it's always possible. Always.